り見送ん城の海の色さやけき島の
Okay.
All right. So what you're about to see is I'm getting to sit down with a good friend of mine named James Pankiewicz Sensei. I first met him when I was stationed in Okinawa as part of the 18th Wing when I was the deputy historian. To put it bluntly, I kind of forced my way into his life by soliciting a tour at Hacksaw Ridge and basically giving him an offer he couldn't refuse. Thankfully, my military background allowed me to expand things, and James was very gracious and introduced me to a lot of karate history that exists on Okinawa. As many of you may or may not know, the actual karate comes from Okinawa, but previously comes from the Fushun, am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Fushun area of China. And if you want to know more about that, I really recommend you go check out a gentleman named Jesse Enkamp Sensei. He is also known as the Karate Nerd, and he just did a wonderful web series that's free on YouTube about the history of karate with its roots in Kung Fu. Really, really good stuff. And if you want an even further in-depth look into how Kung Fu influenced karate, go check out a gentleman named Will and his channel called Monkey Steals Peach. He accompanied Jesse, and if you watch them both, you really get a really, really solid in-depth idea of how the history of karate evolved. Because I'll leave it on this, what many people don't know is that karate in mainland Japan is actually approaching its 100th anniversary. In the next 2 to 3 years, it's going to be about 100 years old that it was instituted in the mainland of Japan. And that's kind of shocking because when you see it in the movies and Bruce Lee and all these things like that, and Chuck Norris, by the way, Chuck Norris is loosely based off of James Pankiewicz, so just so you know that. You think it's hundreds and hundreds of years old, but that has more to do with the culture of Japan and how they treat activities, more so than the history of karate. All that to say, what James and I are going to be talking about today is actually the history of something that he started and unfortunately had to close down, called the Dojo Bar. As you can see, we're both wearing Dojo Bar t-shirts here. But due to the coronavirus pandemic in Okinawa and the restrictions placed on both the U.S. forces that are in Okinawa and the prefecture government, small businesses are suffering. I think that, to put it bluntly, they just are. But what we're here to talk about today is a very, very small piece of niche history that many people might overlook without ever realizing it. And that is the history of the Dojo Bar and the significance it had not only to Okinawa, but to all the karateka, which is what you refer to someone who practices karate, and their day-to-day lives. For 9 years, correct?
That's right.
9 years, it was the go-to point for all visiting karateka. If you came to Okinawa, if you didn't go to the Dojo Bar, you never really came to Okinawa. It was that interesting. So with that, I would like to say thank you very much to James for allowing me to sit down with him and to share this video with you. He is coming to you live from Naha, Okinawa. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
And I'm coming to you live from Washington State. Ah, the beauty of the internet and time zone figuring out.
Amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
Amazing. So let me dive into the questions that I have for you, and you'll see me darting off to my phone here, so pay no attention. I'm reading off note cards because I'm not smart enough to remember all the questions. A lot of Star Wars knowledge in there. I don't want to lose it.
No, absolutely.
So how long have you been on Okinawa, like permanently? I know you visited several times, but permanently came to Okinawa, and how did you come to live on Okinawa?
Yeah, I moved to Okinawa in 2009. Previous to that, I had visited Okinawa a number of times. I first came to Japan back in the mid-90s to study Japanese and also karate on the side. And during that time, I met a girl from Okinawa. We ended up getting married, and I first visited Okinawa around the year 2000. But we were living in London, and it was, like I say, 2009 before we decided to pick everything up, including the 2 kids we had at the time, and move over here to Okinawa. So it's been, what's that, 11 years now?
Yeah, I did not know your kids were not born in Okinawa. I always thought they were.
My eldest 2, born in the UK, yeah, but number 3 came along afterwards.
Yeah. Now, if you are a karateka, you'll hear James repeat a lot of the same answers. That's because I am one of many who's interviewed him. Jesse has interviewed him for his YouTube channel, The Karate Nerd, along with another karate podcast. I'd be horribly remiss if I didn't mention this guy, Josh Simmers. He runs the Okinawa Karate Podcast, arguably the best karate-based podcast that I know of. I mean, there are other ones, but if you want to go into more about James's history with karate and Japan and how he became involved in that life, there is an interview he did with Simmer Sensei, who was actually a sensei of mine when I was in Okinawa, that he did, about a year ago now, and you can find that on his YouTube channel and in the Apple Podcasts. Just look for Okinawa Karate Podcast. So again, that one's for you, Simmer Sensei. So after you arrived on Okinawa, and I know a little bit about, I should confess, I know more about James because I'm asking questions that I already know the answers to, but it's more for that everybody can get the experience and understand how the Dojo Bar came about.
Yeah.
After you arrived on Okinawa, what did you do for work? Because obviously you didn't open the bar right away.
No. The thing that I kind of dropped into initially was helping out with my wife's business. And in fact, it's her family business, probably 6 or 7 generations history there. And they make sweets, traditional Okinawan confectionery.
Yes.
And I'd actually, you know, in our visits to Okinawa before deciding to move out, I sort of got to know the shop a little bit and seeing the sweet production. And I quite like cooking myself. So actually, it was kind of a natural thing that once we were here, that I would start helping out the family business. And so, yeah, I did that for, you know, about a year or so. It's a tiny, tiny little business. They have a store kind of located in central Naha, and the kitchen is on the back of the store, and it's absolutely tiny. I mean, you know, in terms of US standards, it's like a closet, literally, and all the cooking happens there. So in the summer, it turns into this heat box because everything, these huge vats of sugar are cooked with gas. And it's
I can only imagine.
It's quite an experience, but it you know, I wouldn't say that it was bad. I kind of enjoyed it.
Now, did they use copper pots like they do in the East, or correction, in the West?
Sometimes, yeah, have these big, what they call nabe, which are these big, basically metal, round metal pans. The sort of thing. Do you remember the old series Kung Fu with David Carradine?
Oh yes, yes.
And he has that thing where he has to pick up in his test to become a kung fu warrior. Yeah. He has to brand himself with the dragons, right? Like a big metal vat. Well, I always thought if I made a mistake, I'd end up branding myself with liquid sugar with one of these things. But yeah,
what that brand would look like.
It wouldn't be as pretty as his, I suspect. But yeah, so I did that for a year. But all the time I was training karate. Pretty much as soon as I got to Okinawa, I got into the routine of training almost on a daily basis, and trying to make the most of you know, my time before. Well, I never really had a full-time job in Okinawa, to be honest. So that was quite a life change for me, coming from a corporate environment in London.
Really?
Yeah, I used to work, when I was in London, when I graduated from university, I basically went to work in the city of London, and as an analyst, and generally working on technology projects. From an analyst, you know, you graduate to managing projects, then managing bigger projects. So by the time that we left, I was essentially what they call a program manager, managing big technology projects in the city of London, and, you know, surrounding kind of the business community in the UK.
Interesting. Now, was your degree in like business from the university?
I did a degree in Japanese and political studies, Japanese language and political studies. But I'd actually previously been to engineering college before that. So I kind of jumped back and forth between doing technical things and following aspects of culture and history that I was just really, really interested in. And so it wasn't kind of a straight line career path for me, but because I understood technology and was very interested in it, then And I guess my university experience gave me a very broad outlook on the world, because I'd spent a lot of time in Japan during that. And also before I went to university, I traveled around independently. I went to a few different countries too. So I guess I became a better people person by doing that. And, you know, you'd be surprised how much of technology projects basically is about managing people. So
my last job in the military was information operations officer, and all it was how well can you get someone to do what you want for them?
yeah.
So now you mentioned visiting Japan a few times, and honestly, I won't have you retell the story, but every time I listen to it,
Sure.
your interview with Simmer Sensei, I love the story of when you visited, what was it, Hokkaido? And you stayed with that family.
Yeah.
Love that story.
Yeah.
I will try to put a link to that in the description below, because if
Yeah.
you know anything about Japanese architecture, history, anything like that, that's a wonderful story of how a roughly 6'1" man gets fitted into Japanese stuff. So I should apologize that while we are recording this via Zoom, we could have issues with bandwidth here and there. So I do apologize for that. So keeping going though, how did the idea of the dojo bar come about? I mean, you find yourself working in a sweet shop. By the way, those sweets are delicious. But how did that idea come? I want to talk to you about today's sponsor, and that is the Isato Dojo, located in Naha, Okinawa, Japan. Have you ever wanted to study karate in Okinawa, but simply the travel costs prohibit you from doing so? Well, then the Isato Dojo might be a great place for you to get online instruction from respected and renowned masters throughout the island. They offer a wide variety of different styles and instructions that you can apply to, and you can learn all of this from their Facebook page, which you can find a link for in the description below. So, if you want to study Okinawan karate, the Isato Dojo is where you want to go to do that.